Hello everyone, my name is CalSounds, and today I want to look more into Serum 2's warp modes. In the last video I didn't really get to talk about it too much because I was just kind of rushing through it, but I kind of want to take a deeper dive into the warp modes. The warp modes are located in each oscillator, and we now have 2 warp modes to work with. So in Serum 1 you only had 1, but now we can use 2, which is really cool. And so I just want to look at each one and kind of see what's different. Okay, so traditionally we have our sync warp mode, which basically shifts the harmonic content of our sound up. And the cool thing about the sync here is that you notice that there's this little fader down here. So if I turn up my sync and I turn up this fader, it adds like sort of a fade to our synchronization, which makes it a little bit smoother. So you can have like a hard sync or a smoother sync. So yeah, if it's all the way back at 0 without a window, and if you turn it all the way up, of course it's with a window. Then of course we have bend plus, which bends our waveform inwards. Then we have bend negative, which bends our waveform outward towards the edges of the wave cycle. Ooh, kind of even sounds like phase or phase dispersion. That's very interesting, but that's not what that's doing. And then our bend plus and negative, which bend plus, of course, bending it inward, bend negative, bending it outward, and then when it's set to 0%, there is no effect going on with that warp mode. Then we have pulse width modulation. I'll probably be using this for like retro sounds. And then with a square wave. Pretty nice. And then asymmetric plus. Pretty much the same thing as bend, except it pushes the waveform to the left instead of pushing both halves of the waveform to the left. So as you can see, it pushes the cycle, so the whole waveform. Then asymmetric minus, doing the same thing, except it's pushing it to the right side. Let's see if I use a triangle wave. And then asymmetric plus and minus, combining both of those warp modes together. Of course, at 0%, there's no effect. Then at negative 100, pushes the waveform to the left, and then at 100%, it pushes the waveform to the right. Flip is a phase inversion of your waveform. So basically just flips it 180 degrees. And then the warp determines where that flip is happening. So at 100%, it's completely 100% polarity flip. And then mirror just mirrors the waveform. So the mirroring warp mode can kind of sound like an octave up because of the doubling of the waveform on both halves. So it kind of behaves similarly to asymmetric, except on both halves of the wavetable independently. So as you can see on the left side, it is mirrored to the right side of our sawtooth wave. Alright, then we have our remap warp modes, which of course allow you to change the phase and amplitude of our sound. So a diagonal line, there is no change in the waveform. And then once you start adding points, as I turn this up, it changes the waveform. And so remap 1 is just a custom shape that you can have. Remap 2 represents mirrored remapping, so it just kind of behaves like the mirrored warp mode, except you can have your own custom shape. Remap 3 is a sinusoidal, I don't know if I'm a sinusoidal, oh gosh, things are, it's a sine wave remap, which honestly kind of looks like it takes your waveform and warps it 3 times, like just another remap option. And then remap 4 is like mirrored, except it applies it 4 times, which is pretty cool. Ooh, FM, baby. Oh yeah. So yeah, that is really cool. And then we have Quantize, which is a sample rate reduction on your waveform. So yeah, it just kind of breaks down your waveform. Then you have odd even, which is probably one of my favorites. So odd even, you can use it to kind of squarify your sound or your wavetable. So if you have it all the way at 0%, you only hear the odd harmonics of your waveform, and then all the way at the right, 100%, you only hear the even harmonics of your waveform, which is really cool. So I use it as a squarify for my wavetables, and then at 50%, there's no effect happening. Then we have a low pass filter, which just applies a low pass over your sound. Then you have high pass filter, which just applies a high pass filter over your sound. And probably another one of the coolest things about the warp modes is the distortion, which you can have different types of distortions like tube, soft clip, hard clip, diode 1, diode 2, linear fold, sine fold, zero square. So yeah, you can choose different distortion types, which is really cool. We have FM and PD, and so PD is phase modulation. FM is like traditional frequency modulation. So the difference is frequency modulation messes with the frequency of our sound. Phase modulation messes with the phase of our sound to change the waveform and get different harmonics. I think Serum 1 originally had phase modulation and not like true FM. So yeah, there is a little bit of a sound difference. It's just the way they approach it, frequency and phase modulation. So for our FM warp mode, I went ahead and turned on our oscillator B here. I turned the level down. So if you want to do FM, you have to turn on the second oscillator. You can have the level either up or down, but I'm just going to turn it down. For the FM warp modes, you have these options down here: through zero, exponential, and linear. Through zero, kind of, I was reading through the manual for this, and I guess it prevents your signal from like breaking itself. So when the modulator is modulating the carrier wave, it can sometimes make your waveform go into like negative frequencies, especially when you do a lot of modulation. And so that can like cause your sound to have like an aliasing sound actually, and introduce like artifacts in your sound that you don't want. And so with through zero, it fixes that by doing a phase inversion of your sound, which actually adds new harmonic characteristics to your sound. So it helps to have like a more natural and smooth sound, which is pretty cool. And you can kind of hear the difference. So if I turn off through zero and turn on linear, because it doesn't have through zero, you can kind of hear the difference. So I'm going to go ahead and turn up our octave on our second oscillator. And it's, as you can hear, it's not really a smooth sound. It kind of breaks our sound apart, but when you turn on through zero, it's kind of a more smooth transition. And so yeah, that's what that does. And then exponential modulates the carrier, and semitones are octaves. Linear does it in a more proportional manner where it's in hertz. Exponential is really cool though, because it, of course, like it adds a lot of harmonic content to your sound, which can sound a bit harsh or brighter for your sound. And then of course we have our regular phase modulation. So you can do phase modulation from B, C, noise, sub, filter, even the filters, which is pretty nice. So phase modulation from B. That's what that sounds like. And then frequency modulation from B. You can definitely hear the difference. It's pretty crazy. Then you have amplitude modulation and ring modulation. And so amplitude from B. And then we have ring modulation. And then you have swap warps on the bottom, which just basically swaps the warp mode from the left to the right. And then if you do it on the right side, it swaps it from the right to the left. So yeah, pretty cool. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.